So today we come back to the sermon series on Odd Squad of Faith with message number 5. The people we have been hearing about do not look like spiritual giants. My whole intention and plan was to find heroes that are not often spoke of. So these are the people who have been overlooked, rarely preached about from church pulpits, and but they have been displayed extraordinary faith in unusual circumstances. We learned about Ehud. That was like 5 weeks ago. So I want to give you a little summary, okay? The left-handed judge, right? That God uses people who seems unconventional to bring deliverance. And in week 2, we met Jael, who used a tent peg with her fierce courage and became the unlikely heroine of Israel's victory. In week 3, we heard from Balaam's donkey, who literally became a mouthpiece for God when Balaam refused to listen to God. 2 weeks ago, we looked at Elisha, the mentee of Elijah, the floating axe head in the Jordan River, how God and the lesson was how God is not just in a big miracles, but in the overlooked details of our daily lives. And I talked about how God is in the details. Now we turn to message number 5, 4 lepers, 4 men, and they were 4 lepers, 4 dying men, with no food, no future, no name. They were forgotten, they were isolated, they were desperate, living at the edge of a city on a brink of starvation, who show us what bold faith looks like when you have nothing to lose. Sometimes faith doesn't look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like desperation with just enough courage to ask, why stay here until we die? So to help us better understand the story that we read together, we need to know the context, right? So Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel, and I did talk about southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, with the 2 tribes and 10 tribes that were split into northern kingdom of Israel. Now, I have shared with you that northern kingdom of Israel, their capital city was named Samaria. Now, Samaria was under siege by the Aramean army. No food was able to get into Samaria. So no one can get out, no one can get in. The result was complete economic and moral collapse in Samaria. Scripture tells us that a donkey's head sold for 80 shekels of silver. In 2 Kings chapter 6, it tells us the context of this whole event. And he said, donkey's head, I don't know what you can eat from donkey's head, but it was sold for 80 shekels of silver. And donkey was considered unclean animal. So it was unclean animal, and yet it was costing them an outrageous price. And people were even eating dove dung. The famine is so severe that 2 women strike a horrifying deal to cook and eat their children. It's in chapter 6, verse 28 to 29. Now, a shekel was a weight. A shekel was a weight, right? It is equivalent to 11 grams or 0.4 ounces. So using that scale, 80 shekels of silver will weigh about 2 pounds of silver. That's a lot. Excuse me. It can vary depending on the time, of course, but 5 shekel can be worth someone's whole month wage. Some scholars argue that dove dung refers to literally the dove droppings, but some believe that it may be a nickname or term for a kind of wild seed or pod or herb that resembles bird droppings. But either way, the point is very clear. The point is the people of Samaria were in extreme desperation. People were starving and paying high prices for something no one will touch in normal times. And that's how bad things had become. When I walk out of Costco, my jaw drops. And I'm sure you feel that pain as you go to grocery markets. Going back. I just had that thought and I wanted to share with you. Now the king of northern kingdom of Israel, he was witnessing this devastation and he was not able to help. So he tore his robe in grief and blamed the prophet Elisha. In his frustration, he sends someone to kill Elisha. You know, when things go bad, oftentimes these people with power always seeks for someone to put blame on. And that's what the king did. He put the blame on Elisha and he sent someone to kill Elisha. In chapter 7, Elisha is defending. He's saying this. He's delivering his prophecy. And he says, by this time tomorrow, food will be cheap and abundant at the city gate. It sounded very absurd. So one of the king's officers said, even if God opened the windows of heaven, that could not be possible. It could not happen. And Elisha replied, you will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of it. And the passage that Jean read before you, it talked about this officer being stoned to death. So prophecy came to be true. Now the scenes, let's shift it, okay? To 4 lepers at the city gate. These men are named. We don't have their names. And they were pushed outside the city because they had leprosy, bearing both physical disease and social shame. But God is about to use them in a way that transforms everything. And here's why this mattered to us. Because what happened in Samaria, economic collapse, hunger, fear, disbelief, sounds very familiar to us today. Because we see these things happen, maybe not to this extreme, but it's happening all around us. So, for us, we watch our housing prices skyrocket, and groceries and gas strain our budgets, and homelessness reaches devastating levels. I just can't believe how devastating it is when I'm driving around the city. I drive down to LA downtown. It's unbelievable. Anyway. So, we can be asking, where is hope? Where is God? And that's exactly the tension where God showed up during this time. Why those 4 lepers said, verse 3, why stay here until we die? The lepers are caught in an impossible situation, right? They can't go back into the city. Cities are, and they're starving. They can't stay where they are because they will die. Their only option forward is toward the enemy camp. So the 4 lepers decided to go into the enemy camp, hoping for mercy, at least one meal. But when they arrived, no one was there. The camp was empty. The entire Aramean army had abandoned the camp, leaving behind tents, food, silver, clothes, and weapons. And verse 6 tells us, "For the Lord had caused the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a great army, so that they said to one another, 'Look, the king of Israel has hired the Hittites and Egyptian king to attack us.'" So God caused the enemy to hear the sound that was fake, as if a vast army was coming to attack them. So they panicked, abandoned everything, and they fled. Now that was God's intervention. Right? No sword was lifted, no king gave orders. God simply made them to hear what wasn't there. And fear did the rest. God, this is what we need. God to dismantle systems of oppression. God to make strong armies flee at the sound of his power. And sometimes, like the 4 lepers, we may not see the miracles until we get up and walk toward what we fear, walking into enemy camp. It wasn't the bravery, it was a desperation. But desperation can be fueled to move us to live out our faith sometimes. Sometimes when everything is stripped away, all we can do is to move. Being stuck, staying stuck is not an option. Let me tell you a story of a woman that I know. This woman was working in a system that always seemed to reset her worth. She worked hard, she was very faithful, she was skilled and consistent, she faithfully did her job. Over time, her wages had gone up because of her performance. But every time her job was relocated, her salary was reset to minimum wage. No matter how much she proved herself, the system seemed designed to ignore her worth. She felt stuck in this unjust, unfair cycle. And for a long time, she stayed quiet, afraid to rock the boat. But then came a moment of clarity. She couldn't stay silent anymore. To speak up could cost her everything, the whole job that she worked really hard for all her life. But the silence had begun to feel heavier than fear. So she spoke up. She named the injustice. She risked everything, not knowing how her boss will respond. Silence for 24 hours followed, but the decision had to be made within a time frame. So after 24 hours, she just had a couple of hours to spare. And finally, her boss responded, not with rejection, but with recognition. He acknowledged the unfairness. He offered what was fair and just. And her decision to speak up, to move, brought her what was right for her. A recent report says women are paid about 24% less per hour than men with the equivalent qualification. Gender gap is anywhere from 32% to 16% in our country. Unless we speak up and rock the boat, we will not see justice. And that's where faith kicks into action. Not with a perfect plan, but with willingness to step out. And this women have received justice in her life. These 4 lepers, like the women that took risk, they all took a risk, even without a guarantee. they said, let's go over to the camp of Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we live. If they kill us, we die. So this wasn't optimism. It's a realistic realism, right? But even without guarantee, they moved and they were able to experience the deliverance of God. They experienced abundance of food. You know, we don't have to know the end or how it ends. We just have to sometimes trust God enough to take the step. You know, faith doesn't always feel strong and confident. Sometimes it may just feel like crazy, and you can have fear of rocking the boat, but desperation can push our faith into action and cause us to move enough to risk what we are holding on to, just to open up what's waiting for us on the other side of the road. And as they were eating and they're collecting all the resources, they realized, wait a minute, we're not doing right. This is a day of good news, and we're keeping it only to ourselves. So after they ate, they returned to the city with the news. And then they reported to the guard, and the guard reported to the king, and king sent someone to investigate it. And by next day, just as Elijah had prophesied, food was available and affordable, and everyone, their lives were saved because they have discovered the food that was outside of their city. So without these 4 lepers who are willing to go risk everything that they have, and when they discover they had courage to go back to the city and share their good news, many lives were saved. So today, these 4 lepers are telling us being stuck is not an option. Staying stuck is not an option. You know, I remember reading a book by Bill Hybel, Holy Discontent. In his book, he says, what is it that wrecks you? What injustice, what suffering, what brokenness can you not walk past? What bothers you? What grabs back of your head? Maybe that is something that God is calling you to step forward with. Maybe that's where you are needed. I don't know. It's for you to discern. It's for you to decide and pray before God. But whatever is that is causing you to stop and you just cannot stand, maybe God is calling you to take action. Because if you think about it, if they have not moved, if they have not decided this is not right, we need to go tell the city, the whole people, that there are plenty of food out here. If they have not shared that, the city will have starved to death. So friends, I believe God has already prepared some victories for some things. Some healing, some breakthroughs, some provisions. Maybe we are just waiting on the other side of our movement. So today, I want you to ask this to yourself. Where do you need to say, stuck is not an option for me? Staying stuck is not an option for me. And let that holy discontent, the dissatisfaction with the status quo move you into faithful action in God. As they have choose not to die, I hope that we will choose not to die in what we could have walked out of, and let's choose not to starve when the feast is just ahead. So let's not stay stuck when God is still moving. Amen?